So get focused and let's just have this out. The one that says 3.2, have it out. So we're going to be talking about equations in standard and factored form. So when we have a quadratic function in factored form, we have f of x equal to a times x minus r and x minus s. So whenever you guys did something like this, I'm just giving you guys a trinomial that we've done already when you factor. So I have x squared plus 6x plus, so let's say 4 plus 8. So do you guys remember how to factor this trinomial? Okay. If I were to factor this out, what would it be, Jade? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep, x plus 2 and x plus 4. This is what we called factored form. What this guy does, it helps us find our x-intercepts on the graph. So that's what the factored form helps us do. It helps us find our x-intercepts. So now when we have something in standard form, which is basically the trinomial written again, we have it as ax squared plus bx plus c. The only thing that this helps us find is my y-intercept. That's it. So in standard form, we can only get our y-intercept. We've dealt with both. I just haven't taught you how to graph with both of them yet. So the zeros of a relation, so I'm going to be asking for this a lot more often. I'm going to call them zeros. Those are called your x-intercepts. So zeros is another way of saying x-intercepts of its graph, is another word for saying solution, which is another word for saying x-intercepts, which means the x-intercepts can be referred to as the zeros or the solutions of a relation. So when we have an x-intercept, can someone tell me what my y value is when I have an x-intercept? So first of all, before we get even into that, if I draw a graph, what is an x-intercept on a graph? Ashton? Yeah, so it's anything that crosses my x-axis. So say this, and I have a parabola. Those red lines are considered to be my x-intercepts where they cross my x-axis. So if I want to find my x-intercepts, what is my y value of the x-intercepts? 0. So y is equal to 0. So when we have something in factored form, let's just say I have y is equal to x plus 2 and x plus 4. In order for me to figure out what my x-intercepts are, I have to set each of those brackets equal to 0. Because at my x-intercepts, my y values are 0. And what I mean by that, I need to set x plus 2 is equal to 0 because I need to find my x-intercept and my y value at the x-intercept is 0. So now you guys have seen this in grade 9 and grade 10. What are you going to assume I have to do to figure out my x-intercept? Rita? Yeah, I'm going to have to move. I'm going to have to isolate the x. So I'm going to move my positive 2 over, which becomes what? So what's my first x-intercept? Negative 2. So that's going to be right here. So negative 2 and 0. So I'll redraw the graph.
Sorry, is this for all of them? Like you have to isolate x first?
Yeah, so in factored form. This is only in factored form. So this is my first x-intercept, is going to be negative 2 and 0. And who can tell me how I'm going to find my next x-intercept? What do I have to do, Emma?
You would do x plus 4 equals 0,
Yep.
and then move the 4 over.
Mm-hmm. So it becomes what?
So then it would become negative 4.
Yeah, x is equal to negative 4. So that is my second x-intercept, and it's going to be right over here. Negative 4, comma 0. Now, in order for me to figure out how to sketch this graph, we're going to do something that we already learned. So what is my a value in this graph? Is it positive or negative in the equation? Remember, my a value is the number outside of the bracket. It's positive, which means my graph is opening which way? Up or down? Up. So this is going to be my sketch. That is how you would sketch a graph using the factored form. Yes, Jade?
Where's the a value?
So whenever there's no number in front of the bracket, it's automatically 1.
Oh. Sorry, so I got up to like the x equals negative 4 and x equals negative 2.
Yep. So now you have to plot those on your x-intercepts.
Why do we have to put them in our x-intercept?
Because I'm going to ask you to start sketching graphs
Okay.
using these now. So now that we've kind of did an example with the factored form, let's see what happens now. So we have two functions. We have f of x equal to 2x squared minus 5x minus 12, and g of x equal to x minus 4 times 2x plus 3. So one of them is in standard form, which is the f of x. So this guy's in standard form. And my x minus 4 and 2x plus 3, that is in factored form. So now let's create a table of values and see what happens. So what is the value of my graph when x is equal to negative 3 for both of them? So if I sub in x is equal to negative 3, what would it be? So I'm going to actually put it up on Desmos because, it's easier that way.
Are we going to have to know how to do that?
Not right now. Right now, I'm just going to show you a little example. What is it? 2x squared minus 5x minus 12. Okay. So let's find negative 3, which is somewhere here. So what is the y value when x is negative 3? I'm holding it. What is it? It's moving a lot.
I can't see.
It's 21. Hold on. So at negative 3, my y value is 21.
Is there a way that we can figure this out without?
You would have to sub in negative 3 in for x, and then you can figure out your values. So now we'll do the same thing for g of x. So we'll evaluate when x is negative 3. So g of negative 3 is equal to negative 3 minus 4 times 2 times negative 3 plus 3. So what's negative 3 times negative 4? What would that be in my first bracket? No, negative 3 minus 4, sorry.
Negative 12?
Nope,
Oh, wait,
negative-
negative 3 minus 4?
Yep.
Negative 1.
Nope. Negative 3 minus 4. It's getting more negative. Negative 7. Okay. And in my bracket, I have 2 times negative 3, which is what? Negative 6 plus 3. What does my second bracket simplify into? What's negative 6 plus 3? Negative 3. And now to figure out my y value when x is negative 3, I just have to multiply those two numbers together, which gets me what? 21. Positive 21. It's the same thing. Yep, because you can, when you factor the standard form, it gets you this. So I'm going to ask you guys to factor that out.
So could it be like a matter of finding out like which one you prefer? So say, for example, if you like, if it's easier for you to find.
I always say factored form is easier to find your y values
Yeah.
because you're working with two different numbers.
For the x values that's on the table, do they always have to be negative 3 to have 2?
No, they don't have to.
But
So-
you'll still get the same answer.
You'll still get the same answer. So since graphs are symmetrical, what is my y value going to be at positive 3 then? 21. Okay. Now let's figure out, or use a factor form to figure out what my y value is when x is negative 2. So try to figure out what my y value is when x is negative 2. So use a factored form or standard form, doesn't matter. You're both going to get the same answer. So find the y value of the graph when x is negative 2. So sub in x for negative 2.
Once we figure out the factor form, it gives us the standard form. So we just need to do one.
I got positive 6.
Okay, let's see if anyone else got positive 6. Got positive 6? Anyone else got positive 6?
I got,
It's about 6,020.
How?
I didn't finish it.
Okay, we'll do g at negative 2. Let's see if you guys are subbing anything wrong.
Oh wait, I was doing gx and then negative 2.
So we'll sub in negative 2 for x. So listen up if you subbed in stuff incorrectly. So I'm going to get negative 2 minus 4 times 2 times negative 2 plus 3.
Sorry, could you slow down a bit? Sorry, so we're doing f of x or g of x?
We're doing g of x.
So what did you sub? You subbed in?
Negative 2.
Okay.
So my first bracket, what's negative 6 times, what's negative 4, negative 2 minus 4? Sorry. Negative 6. Okay, what is my second answer going to consist of? So 2 times negative 2 plus 3. So that'd be negative 4 plus 3. So I got negative 6 times what? Negative 1, because negative 4 plus 3 is negative 1. So what is my y value at negative 2? Homer? 6. So which means negative 2 is going to have a y value of 6, which means that at positive 2 it's also going to have a y value of 6 because my graphs are symmetrical.
So it's gonna be positive 6.
Yeah. Do any of you know why the table of values for f of x and g of x are the same? Okay. If I asked you to factor that trinomial, what would you get?
You would get the standard form.
No, that's already in standard form. I'm asking you to factor it.
Oh, then you get the factor.
How do I factor this trinomial?
By finding the 3.
By expanding and simplifying.
No, you guys did this like 2 days ago.
Jade.
Jade. Yep. What's my product? Remember, it's the first and the last number multiplied together.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Oh, that's not common factors.
Oh, well, like you.
What's my product and my sum? Jade? Okay, and what's my sum? Okay. So what are two numbers that multiply to negative 24 and add up to negative 5? Yes, sir? 8 and negative 3? Yeah. So negative 8 times 3 is equal to negative 24, which is good. And negative 8 plus 3 is equal to negative 5, which is good because that is what we want. Yeah.
It's negative 24 because
It's 2 times negative 12. And my sum is always the number in the middle.
Well, that's why I was screwing up on the test.
So now, let's see what happens when we factor this. So I got 2x squared. My first factor was minus 8x plus 3x minus 12. So how do we end up factoring this now? Brooklyn?
You find the common factor between 2 and negative 8.
Yep.
And then the common factor between 3 and 12.
Perfect. So what's the common factor between 2x squared and negative 8x?
2x.
Yep, 2x. Which means I divide everything here by 2x. So what's left over in my bracket? X minus 4. Good job.
Oh, I remember that.
And for 3x minus 12, what is my biggest common factor, Olivia? 3. Which means I divide everything by 3. So now what's left over in my bracket? Cynthia.
Minus 4.
There we go. So as you notice, my two brackets are considered the same. So what does this look like in fully factored form? Ashton.
X minus 4 and 2x plus 3.
Okay, now look at the graph g of x. Is that not the same? Yeah. So the reason why we're getting the same answers is because when you change it from standard form into factored form, you get the exact same thing.
So couldn't we have done that in the first place?
Yeah.
And then you don't have to do the whole.
So what makes your life easier when graphing is changing it into factored form, because you can find out a lot more things. You can find out the Y-intercept, the X-intercepts, and the vertex. With standard form, all you can really do is find your Y-intercept and the way it opens, and that's pretty much it. That's the only bad thing about standard form. So if I ever ask you to sketch, always try using factored form, because it's probably going to make your life easier. Okay, try. What are the X-intercepts in standard form? By not looking at them. Exactly. Yes, Olivia?
I didn't hear
Yep.
the question.
Could you explain again why f of x and g of x are the same?
So we factored f of x, right? And that gave us x minus 4 and 2x plus 3, which is the same thing as g of x, which is x minus 4 and 2x plus 3. That's why. Not in this case, or not in every other case, but in this case, they happen to be the same. So now I want you guys to find my y value when you sub in x for negative 1. So sub in x for negative 1 in standard form and tell me what my y value is.
Negative 5.
Yeah, negative 5? Negative 5, 2?
And then negative 12.
Negative 5?
And negative 12.
Relax.
Yeah, and then 0.
Let's see what everyone else gets. We got 2 people who said negative 5. So again, all you're doing is plugging in negative 1 for x and getting your y value. Also, you can technically look at the graph right here. So what's my y value at negative 1? Negative 5.
I think I'm doing the math wrong.
Pardon?
The way are you wanting us to do it? Are you wanting it?
So use the factored form. So sub in negative 1 for x in your factored form.
Wait, what were you saying about the graph?
Oh, the graph, from the graph you can see what the y value is because it's given to you.
Oh, I know. go like this, you go like this.
We went to the same answer either way, like you did it.
Right?
You remember?
You do x minus 4.
So we're on consensus. It's -5. Yeah, it would be the same for a positive one. It would be -5. Okay. And last but not least, if I plug in 0 for x, what is my value? -12. So we'll do some examples where it's not like this crazy or this much work. Yes, Olivia?
So you know how it's just like -3 and -3 and 3 have like the same G of x? Is it always gonna be like?
Yeah, because graphs are symmetrical. So the negative one will have the same y value as the positive one. Yep.
Is this how it's intense as it gets?
No, we have to do completing the square. That stuff. Okay. So we have a table here for the next page. So obviously we have the same equation. We have our graph in standard form and our graph in factored form. I was going to say vertex form. So when it comes to standard form, what did I say the only thing you're able to find from standard form is? The y-intercept. And the y-intercept in standard form is always going to be the last number in the equation. So what is my y-intercept going to be in this case? -12. So y-intercept is going to be 0 and -12. Can I find anything else from my standard form, or is that it? That's it. I can't find the vertex. I cannot find my zeros. And I cannot find my axis of symmetry, which means this is all this is useful for is your y-intercept. Yeah.
Wait, sorry, what's vertex?
Sorry, not vertex form. Vertex?
Or like, sorry, what's vertex?
Oh, like what is the vertex of the graph?
Oh,
Like the highest or lowest point of the graph. Okay, so for the factor form, we can find the vertex, I can find my zeros, and I'm able to find my axis of symmetry. We're gonna do the vertex last. Because the reason being is because we need my x-intercepts to help me with my vertex. So what are my x-intercepts for my factored form? What would they be? Let's see if you guys remember how to do this. Olivia, what's one of them? Wait, did you set it equal to 0? And move stuff over?
Oh, it's, sorry, positive.
Yep.
Positive 4.
So the first one is going to be x minus 4 is equal to 0 because we said the y value of every x-intercept is 0. So now I have to move the -4 over, so it becomes x is equal to 4. So that's my first x-intercept. What is my second x-intercept going to be? Let's see if you guys can figure this out. Cynthia.
X is equal to -1.5.
Good. is equal to 0. Move the 3 over, so it becomes 2x is equal to -3. And like Cynthia said, because we want x by itself, I have to divide both sides by 2. So x is equal to -3/2, or I'll allow a decimal because it's easier to graph a decimal, -1.5. When it comes to graphing, if it helps you to keep it in decimal, that's fine. But I would write the fraction and then put like an arrow and be like it's 0 point something something something. So now let's take a look at it visually. So how do you think, so these are my x-intercepts over here. We're working with the same question. How do you think I'm going to find the vertex using my x-intercepts? Remember, my vertex happens right in the middle of the graph. So what do you think I'm going to do with my x-intercepts to help me find the vertex? If you have an idea, Cynthia, just say it.
Can you list out all of the XCR and YER stuff or no?
That would take too long.
But you can do that.
No, it would take forever.
Nine.
Anyone want to take a stab at this? Cynthia gave us an idea, it wasn't correct, but it's fine.
The y intercept of 0?
Nope. Nope. So how can I use my x-intercepts to help find my vertex?
You plug them in.
You're getting closer. Olivia?
Use one of the, you take one of the X-intercept and then plug it in.
So I'm going to draw a line right in the middle.
On the graph.
So I'm going to draw a line. So this is my vertex here. I'm going to draw a line right in the middle. So how do I find the middle of the two x-intercepts? The vertex happens exactly in the middle between both of them. Yeah. So how do I find that, Olivia?
Take both X-intercepts divided by 2. Sorry, add both of them, then you divide by 2.
So in order to get the average of something or half of something, you add both values together and divide it by 2. So when we do that, that would help us find our axis of symmetry. So let's start with that. So like Olivia said, we're going to take our x-intercepts, we're going to add them together and divide it by 2. So x is equal to 4 plus -1.5 divided by 2.
Sorry, could you explain how to find the axis of symmetry again?
So take your x-intercepts, add them together, and then divide it by 2, because that's going to give you the exact middle of the graph. So what's 4 plus -1.5? 2.5 divided by 2 gives me what? So that means that the middle of the graph is split when x is equal to 1.25.
Wait, why did you divide it by 5?
Because I want the average. I want the middle.
Oh, okay.
This is for axis of symmetry.
Yeah, it's for axis of symmetry. Then we're going to use the axis of symmetry to help find the vertex.
Oh, I didn't do that yet.
That's what we're doing now.
Oh, that's not your vertex. You use the axis of symmetry.
So when we did the transformations and the H and the K stuff, what did I say my axis of symmetry was? What part of the vertex, the X or the Y? The X part of the vertex. So my axis of symmetry is the X value of my vertex.
We already have a vertex.
Yeah, we have half of the vertex. We just need the Y
You can see
value.
on the graph.
Yeah.
So negative 1.25 is going to be,
1.25. Positive.
sorry.
Yeah, it's going to be the X value of your vertex. So now in order for me to find my whole vertex, what do I have to do with x is equal to 1.25? What do you think I'm going to do with that in the equation?
You put it on 0, like y,
Not y,
x.
x. So wherever you see x in your factored form, you're going to plug in 1.25, and that's going to give you the y value of your vertex. So g at 1.25 is equal to 1.25 minus 4 times 2 times 1.25 plus 3. So using your calculators, if you want to use mental math, what's 1.25 minus 4?
I don't have the answer, it's just a question.
Mhm.
Can we also plug in the 1.25 to the
Standard form? You can. But the reason why I like plugging it into factored form is because you have a number in one bracket and a number in the other bracket. So you limit your margin for error. Because you have two different things, so I can do, 1.25 minus 4. That's easy to do, right? As opposed to doing 2 times 1.25 squared minus 5 times 1.25 minus 12. So what is my first bracket, Brooklyn?
-2.75.
Perfect. And what does my second bracket simplify into? So I know 2 times 1.25 is what? Is it 3.5?
It's 5.5.
Brooklyn, did you get the same thing? So what's
2.5.
2.5?
Yeah, it's 2.5
Okay.
plus 3.
Yeah, 2.5.
Okay.
And then we do 5.5.
Perfect. So now, what's negative 2.75 times 5.5?
Negative 15.125.
That's fine. So what's your vertex then?
1.25.
Mhm.
And that's your x, and then y is negative 15.
Perfect. So because I don't like, I like you guys hate fractions. They're okay for me, whatever. I'm gonna try to give you guys mostly like whole number answers
Thank you.
that
I
work.
appreciate it.
I'll give you the occasional fraction.
I appreciate it.
That's it. So the vertex is 1.25 and negative 15.125. No. Why? It's 3 decimal places. Not that hard to write.
It's so lazy.
It's 3. What's so hard about writing 3 numbers?
So for the vertex, okay. So you get the axis of symmetry and the y value
Mhm.
to find the vertex.
Yep.
And what we're just doing, we're finding the y value.
Yeah, we're just finding the y value of the vertex.
The y value of the vertex.
Yeah, because the axis of symmetry gives me my x, but now I have to use that to help me find my y value.
So it would be different than the y. I feel like we would want to practice these.
So we have 2 more examples doing the same thing. The next one is asking us, so if you go to number 2, is use the zeros to find the maximum or min of the factored form equation. Basically another way of saying find the vertex and then tell me if it's a maximum or a minimum. It's the next page. So before we do anything, can someone tell me what my X-intercepts are going to be? Jade, what's one of them? Yep. So my first X-intercept is going to be negative 3. So X plus 3 is equal to 0. Yeah, positive 2 is the next one. And then my next one is X is equal to 2. So again, how do I use my X-intercepts to help find my vertex? What do I have to find first? So I'm going to label these guys in order. So first thing you'd always do is find your X-intercept. So this is 1. Then find your axis of symmetry, which is 2. And then you can finally find your whole vertex, which is step 3. So what do I need to do to help me find my vertex? What do I have to find first? And how do I find my axis of symmetry?
By adding the two x values together
Mhm.
and dividing it by 2.
So I get -3 plus 2 divided by 2. So what's -3 plus 2? Cynthia?
Sorry, no.
-3 plus 2. -1. So my axis of symmetry is x is equal to -1/2 or -0.5. So now, what can I use this for to help me find my vertex? What do I use -0.5? How do I use it? Rita. Yeah. So I'm going to sub in -0.5 in for x. So we have x is equal to -0.5. So now I'm just going to sub that in for all of my x's in my factored form. Yeah, because -3 plus 2 is -1. So what's -0.5 plus 3? What does that give me? 2.5? And can someone else tell me what -0.5 minus 2 gives me? -2.5. So now you're going to multiply those two numbers together, and what would that give me? So given both my axis of symmetry and the y value of my vertex, what is my vertex as a coordinate now? What's my vertex now? We have both pieces of information. Ashton.
-0.5 is your x and y is 6.
Perfect. So now I have to determine if this is a max or a min. So remember, look at the number outside of the bracket. Is it a positive or a negative? Yeah, so this guy over here. Is that a positive number or a negative number? Which means my graph opens which way? So do I have a maximum or a minimum? Oh, remember if my graph, if my graph opens upwards,
It's the opposite.
if my graph opens upwards, I have a minimum because it's the lowest point.
Yeah, I know, but still it's weird. 'Cause I feel like
Yeah.
if we open it up.
If it opens down, I have a max. So which means my vertex here is a minimum. You guys are probably counting down the days when this quadratic stuff is done.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought it was done with the last student.
Yes, Jade? Yep. If it's opening up, it's a minimum. If it's opening down, it's a max. So down equals max. Up equals min. Yes. So the height of the football is kicked from the ground is given by the function h of t is equal to -5t squared plus 20t, where h of t is the height in meters and t is the time in seconds from release. So I want to write a function in factored form. So is this a trinomial or not really? Does it have 3 terms? Yes or no? No. So I cannot factor using our knowledge on trinomials. So the next thing we have to figure out is if there's a greatest common factor.
Wait.
So we do, yes,
Sorry. So we have to do the -5t squared plus t,
20t.
20t, sorry. And then we have to write that as axis?
Yeah, so because it's not a trinomial, so because we don't have three terms, I can't use sum and product. So which means the next thing to do is to look for the greatest common factor. Olivia, what would it be?
Wait, would it be 5t or negative 5t?
So remember, I always want the t squared to be positive. So what number would I factor out?
Okay,
Yep. So I'm going to have h of t is equal to negative 5t squared plus 20t. The general rule is if the number in front of the t squared is negative, factor out the negative. If it's positive, you factor out a positive.
What if it were positive 5t minus 20? If you just do-
Positive 5t minus 20t? Or
Yeah,
positive 5t squared minus 20t?
yeah.
You factor out just positive.
Okay, got it.
So the number in front of that t squared or the x squared tells you what sign to factor out.
Got it.
So in this case, if it's a negative in front of the t squared, factor out a negative. If you have a positive in front of t squared, factor out the positive number. You had a question, Cynthia?
I was still on the previous question.
Mhm.
I don't know if it's minimum or maximum. again.
So if your a value is positive, like over here, because there's no number, it's automatically assumed to be positive 1. That means my graph opens up and I have a minimum. If it was a negative number, that means it's a maximum because my graph is opening downwards.
So are you saying you factor out negative 1 squared?
Yeah, in this case, we can factor out negative 5.
And then if it was positive, we just stay.
And can I factor out a t? Yes or no?
Yes.
So I'm going to divide everything by negative 5t. So what would be left inside of my bracket? Sarah, t minus 5. Perfect.
4.
T minus 4. Sorry. I gotta trust you guys with the answers. So if you make mistakes, that's fine. You just gotta remind me to fix it. Yes, Jade?
I don't get why it's negative 5 and not positive 5.
Because I always want that variable t squared to be positive, right? So if there's a negative number in front of it, you factor out the negative number. If it's a positive number in front of it, factor out the positive. You always factor that out. Yep.
The sign in the middle is positive between the 20 and the 5. So why?
Because we're dividing it by a negative number, what's a positive divided by a negative?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Now for B, it's asking when will the football hit the ground? So first of all, let's figure out my X-intercepts. Or my T-intercepts, because we're using T. So what's my first T-intercept or X-intercept when the ball is at the ground? 0. So I'm going to set negative 5t is equal to 0. Divide both sides by negative 5. And so when you have a term with a variable without anything being added to it, your result's always going to be an X-intercept of 0.
Okay.
So you see how 5t or negative 5t doesn't have anything plus or minus after it?
Yeah. So now
That would always be 0. Yeah. So if it doesn't have a number,
Middle.
the X-intercept is 0.
Would that be called the middle number?
No.
Okay.
What's my next T-intercept going to be? Rita? 4. So t minus 4 is equal to 0. T is equal to 4. So remember, time goes from, from 0 to whatever. So when does the football hit the ground? At 4 what? What unit of time are we in? Seconds. So the ball hits the ground at 4 seconds. So my graph is probably going to look something like this. So it starts at 0. This is my other X-intercept. The ball is going to go up and then hit the ground at 4 seconds. Yes, Emma?
So how did you get negative 4 at that, like t minus 4?
So when I divided, so remember for the X-intercepts, my Y value is always 0. So I have to set each of those guys equal to 0 and then just isolate for the variable. So I get t minus 4 is equal to 0. To leave t by itself, I just have to move the negative 4 over.
No, I understand. Yeah, I understand.
So now I need to figure out, yes, Cynthia?
You feel like right a bit for sentence to lose a point.
Like half. I prefer them for these types of questions now. So now C is asking, when will the ball reach its maximum height? So what am I going to find next? What part of the vertex? So I'm going to find my axis of symmetry. And how do I find that again? What do I do with my two x-intercepts? Cynthia?
Add them and then divide them by 2.
So I'm going to add my x-intercepts and then divide them by 2.
Actually, that's 0.
0 plus 4, exactly, divided by 2. So I'm left with 0 plus 4, which is just 4, and divide that by 2. So can someone tell me what 4 divided by 2 is? 2. So when does the ball reach its maximum height? How many seconds?
2 seconds?
Yeah. Therefore, the max height happens at 2 seconds. Perfect. We have that down. Now, does someone want to tell me how I can find the maximum height of the football? So that means I need to figure out the y value of my vertex. Emma, how am I going to do that?
You would have to insert the y. Sorry, no. You have to. The first one you have to make it like a 0 out of like.
No, we have to use our answer from C. J. Yep. You're going to say? You're going to put what into what?
2 into the.
Yep.
Like sub it for.
For what variable? Yeah, for t. So I'm going to plug in I should really say t is equal to, so that's my mistake, because our variable is t. So I'm going to sub in the value of 2 in for t. So I have, you can put it in any one you feel comfortable putting it in. So I'll put it in the factored form. So h of t is equal to negative 5t times t minus 4. So I'm going to sub in 2 for t. So h at 2 is equal to negative 5 times 2 minus 4. So what's negative 5 times 2? Okay. 2 minus 4 is negative 2. So what is my height at 2 seconds, guys?
5.
Negative 10 times negative 2.
Alright,
Positive 20. Therefore, the max height is how many meters? Yep. So now we're going to have to graph without using a table of values. So the reason why graphing becomes easier now, you don't have to do a table of values. What 3 pieces of information did we find in this question to help us graph this function? Or 3 pieces. Technically, one has 2 of them. Okay, one of them is the x-intercepts, and what's the last one? Because x-intercepts, they have 2. And the vertex. So now we can graph this function only using the x-intercepts and my vertex. So that's how the graphing part's going to get a bit easier. So my first x-intercept or t-intercept happened at 0, 0.
How do we know what the t-intercept is?
We got it from here when we factored it.
B?
Yeah, in B.
Oh, okay.
And my other t-intercept is 4. And now we know what is my vertex.
2 and 1.
Yeah, so my axis of symmetry was 2. So that's the x part of the vertex. And my y value is going to be 20. So my vertex is going to be 2 and 20. So 10, 20, it's going to be here. And this is how your graph would look like for the ball. That's it.
Oh, mine looks a bit more.
That's all you would do. Well, I used a different scale than all of
Yeah.
you, so that's why mine looks like that. So any questions from this, or is it pretty, straightforward now? So you guys you can do the practice questions from the textbook, and if you have any questions regarding the questions from the book, just let me know and I'll come by and